Hey guys, in this video we're going to install a GGB turbo back exhaust on this 2017 Polaris RZR XP Turbo. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. By the looks of it, it's going to be a pretty exhausting day in the shop today. We got two full GGB exhaust systems sitting on the bench here. We got a full turbo back system for the 2017 RZR Turbo, the Battle Wagon, and then we've got a slip-on system for the 2022 CF Moto Z-Force 950. If you've been paying attention to the channel over the last few months, you may have noticed that I've got a GGB exhaust system on my RZR. What you've been seeing is a prototype system. A few months back, we did a charity ride, the Tracks for Breast Cancer event. At that event, I met a guy named Gary, and he works at GGB. He was riding a Wildcat and sending it. We spent the weekend riding together, we hit it off. He invited me out to their facility. So the GGB facility is located in Burk's Falls, Ontario, which is about a 3-hour drive from where I am, about 2 hours outside of Toronto. Let's dig in here, let's check out this system. These are full stainless systems, and every system is tuned on a dyno so that you know when you bolt this thing on, it's gonna run right. You don't need any tuning, you don't have to change anything. You pull this system out of the box, you slap it on your machine, and it works perfectly. Let's see what we got here, and let's get this thing installed. We'll start off by installing the system, the full turbo back system on my 2017 RZR, the Battle Wagon. And then we'll do another video where we do a full install on the 2022 CF Moto. Nicely packed up. Oh yeah. Look at that. That's a nice high quality sticker. If this is a sign of the quality, then whew, we're on the right track. Ooh, more stickers. You know guys, there's nothing worse than spending a bunch of money on parts and then not getting any stickers with it. We got a gasket in there, we got a bunch of mounting hardware, everything you'd expect. All right, there we have it. These mufflers are not packed with like fiberglass mat or anything like that. It's a lifetime system. It's fully stainless inside and out. Whether you're running a tuned ECU or a stock ECU, this thing just bolts right on and runs like it's supposed to. It comes with a spark arrestor installed. It's removable. Let's dig into the next box. The box is even stapled up nicely, not taped. Pretty cool. And we've got some more stickers. Oh yeah, that is a nice piece. Nice flex pipe. I like the flex pipe they're using. It's more of a heavy duty, full stainless, kind of like a motorsports grade flex pipe. We got a nice flange on here. Nice high flow setup coming out of the turbocharger. Really nice heavy duty heat shield here, really nicely welded on there. Yeah, initial impressions, really nice. So I've got the prototype system on the RZR right now, like I said, and it doesn't look this pretty, obviously, because it's a prototype. They've really cleaned up the production system, which is really nice to see, especially this heat shield design. It's really visually appealing and looks quite tough. Let me give these a quick wipe down so that we can get some really nice shots, and then I'll show you an up close and personal view of these things before we get the RZR into the shop and slap this thing on and then go test it. This system, I believe, will be available as a slip-on, which is just this muffler portion, or a full turbo back if you want to run the downpipe as well. Now, if you're running an aggressive tune or you're a really hard rider, then the turbo back system is definitely worth it, and I would recommend it. There's not many turbo back systems on the market. Sometimes they'll tell you it's a full exhaust system. Most of the systems are what they call a slip-on. It's just the muffler. If you want a full exhaust system, then you need this downpipe, the full turbo back. So everything from the turbo back. So these two pieces, as far as the RZR is concerned. But this system that's on here right now is a prototype. It's the system they put together to develop their production system. So things on it are a little bit different, a little rougher around the edges, obviously. We use this system, I rode it a few times to make sure there's no issues with the heat shields, with the way it flows, with the way it works or sounds. And after getting feedback and deciding that everything seems pretty good, that's when they went ahead and they finalized the production system. So the welds are cleaner, the flanges look nicer, the hardware is higher quality, and all that stuff. generally speaking, the system appears pretty much almost identical, with just a few little changes and some additional attention to detail on the production system. All right, so we'll just pull this system off. Removing this is the same as removing your stock system, basically. You're just going to remove the muffler. There's a few springs and a couple bolts. On the stock system, there'll be a plastic shield here. Behind it, there'll be a silver heat shield protecting the chassis and the engine back there. And then we'll remove the bolts off the turbo on the downpipe there. This is usually the worst section to deal with. Sometimes on an exhaust system that's been heat cycled for years, those bolts that connect the downpipe to the turbocharger can be really fused on there to the point where sometimes they will break. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes removing the stock downpipe can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. It's kind of like a 50-50 shot. Sometimes you're lucky they come off, sometimes they can be a pain. Sometimes one of them will break, sometimes all of them will break. If you need help on how to deal with that, how to extract them, or what to do in a situation where they do break, I have a very in-depth hour-and-a-half video on the channel about removal and installation of an exhaust system on this machine, including the extraction of broken studs in the turbocharger and what you can do to remedy that on a different exhaust system I ran in the past. All those steps will apply to this as well. We'll get that heat shield out of the way there so we can have some access to the hardware, and then I'll start by cracking those bolts. Hopefully they all come off. I just replaced the turbocharger on this machine, so those bolts should come out no problem. Once those bolts are cracked, the rest of the setup is easy, just removing the muffler section, and then we'll install the new one. You will have to remove the O2 sensor. Removing the O2 sensor, sometimes if you're lucky, it'll come off with just a regular wrench, but you actually would be better off using like a line wrench. You get a better grip on there. You don't want to round that sensor. It should not be in there too tight, but sometimes with the heat cycling, they can fuse themselves in there pretty good. So just be careful with that. You don't want to break it. And when you're undoing it, try not to damage or twist any of these wires. If you break one of those wires, you will have to replace your O2 sensor. So go ahead and remove all those bolts off the turbo. I find it's best to remove 2 of them, and then you can leave 1 or 2 still in, just to hold that downpipe in place while we undo the bolts between the downpipe and the muffler section. So we'll unbolt this flange here now. Now that that's unbolted, we can go ahead and remove the last bolt or 2 that we have loosely inserted in the downpipe between the turbo, and we can pull that downpipe off. Now we just need to unscrew the O2 sensor. A little bit of penetrating lube never hurts. Knock her loose on there. Hopefully it'll help knock her loose. Get our line wrench on there. There we go. Now we can go ahead and remove the rest of the hardware that was loosely holding the downpipe onto the turbocharger here. In my case, that's just 1 more bolt. Pop these guys out, and the downpipe can come out. There we go. Good time to inspect your turbocharger. Make sure there's no cracks or damage. Make sure that impeller is not contacting anything it's not supposed to. Inspect your gasket as well. They don't send you this gasket. Now, there's multiple ways of looking at this. If you're OCD and you really like to do things, let's say, over the top and perfect, then go ahead and order one of these from Polaris. Hold your breath, because it's probably like $40. But you can put a new one of these on, but these are 100% definitely reusable. I've reused mine in the past, and they don't leak. So yeah, go ahead and reuse it if you want to. Go ahead and replace it if you feel you need to. So let's take a peek at that turbocharger. There we have it. My turbo's looking minty fresh, and it should be, because heck, I'd probably guess there's not even 100 miles on this turbo yet. It's brand new. If you are inspecting your turbocharger, what you want to look for is you want to make sure that that impeller on top there has not made any visible contact with the housing. If there's no damage to it, you want to also make sure that there's no cracks around that flap valve, around the wastegate there. They tend to crack in between the wastegate and the impeller. That seems to be where the Polaris turbos like to fail. Also a good time to make sure everything's actuating properly. Should be able to move your wastegate lever here by hand. If you can't do that and it's seized up, then things aren't running right, and you need to address that. Take the 2 bolts out of the top here, and then there's a spring in the bottom left corner there. We'll pop that off. If you're still running a stock exhaust setup, then just pull all the bolts out and remove that muffler. I'm sure you guys can figure the next step out. So I'll get that pulled off and out of the way, and then we can install the new system. This is a really easy removal and install, guys. Don't hesitate to do this on your own, even if you don't have much experience wrenching at all. Good time to inspect things behind here. Always take advantage of these opportunities to do inspections. When you're in areas that you don't frequently look in, when you remove things that aren't frequently removed, make sure you inspect everything around that area, because it's a lot easier to find something with a small issue and fix it, rather than letting it get out of control and cause a bunch of collateral damage, which will end up being much more expensive and complicated to fix down the line than it should be. It's always better to be preventative than reactive. Let's address one more thing here. You notice I have no heat shielding there at all. I should. This is what's gonna come on your machine stock. This big metal heat shield. Realistically, you should reuse it. We were testing to see how it would respond without it. So I ran without it for a few rides. And with that being said, there were no issues with heat. We didn't melt any plastics. Now obviously I'm also not a racer, so if you're even harder rider than me, you might run into issues. But you should probably run this. I'm gonna reinstall it. You gotta tweak and kind of bend. If you got a bumper installed, it's really tight squeeze to get in there. So I'm gonna mess around with that in a second. We'll get that back in there. Having that extra little bit of protection is probably gonna be good, especially when you're sitting there idling. It's not so much when you're moving, it's when you're sitting there with the exhaust all hot after you just ripped it and you're idling and all that heat's rising up into your plastics and into your bed. Plus, you know, keeping some heat off of that intake manifold is also beneficial too. You want to keep those intake air temperatures as low as possible. There's no sense of throwing more heat at that intercooler there. Inside that intake manifold is a radiator for your water to air intercooler setup on a turbocharged application. Damn, look at all the space you get if you're not running exhaust. I think this necessitates a fire up without the exhaust on. I mean, we got to hear this thing with just open turbo, right? Obviously that's no load. It would sound a little cleaner under heavy load, but I recommend not running it like that. You'll melt everything around there. But I mean, a lot of guys like to run that captain's call or that electronic kind of dump valve where you can bypass your exhaust, and it does sound really cool. It sounds like a little trophy truck. Let's see how much better it sounds with that GGB on there, so let's get that puppy installed. I've got the factory heat shield in place now. It's just held in with 4 10mm bolts. And now we can mount the muffler. They send you all the hardware you need. So we're gonna use this bolt with this plastic spacer, 2 washers, and a nylock nut. We'll get our 2 bolts with spacers. So it goes bolt through the muffler, spacer, washer. There's rubber isolators up here that the muffler mounts in to reduce vibration. Make sure they're in there, make sure they're not damaged. Now that you've got your bolts through there, you're gonna do a washer on the other side and then your nylock. Now I believe this is also set up where you can run your stock plastic exhaust shield here if you wanted to. I mean, I like showing off the exhaust, plus I don't like the way that plastic thing looks in the first place. These are 14 mil fasteners. Don't go too crazy tight on these, okay? Because it's gonna pull it into the rubber there. You want it to be tight so it doesn't move, but you don't wanna go crazy on it. Now we can mount our exhaust spring back. That's on there nice now. Little bit of movement, and then you need that for it to expand and move. It vibrates a lot, it heats up, it changes temperature quickly. You don't want this to be a completely solid setup where you'll get cracking. Okay, our muffler is mounted there now. Piece of cake. That was nice and easy. 2 bolts and a spring. That's my kind of install. Oh yeah, it's looking nice and fresh on there. Okay, let's position the downpipe now. Make sure not to forget your gasket on both sides. This gasket goes here between the muffler and the downpipe, and then your OEM metal gasket between your turbo and your downpipe. Once again, as expected, all the hardware is provided. So I'm positioning my turbo gasket on there. Now we'll fish this guy through there. Get 1 or 2 of the Allen 6mm Allen heads started on the turbo. Position that gasket properly. Don't pinch it, don't bend it. Get 2 bolts in there to hold the gasket in place. Be careful, get these started really good by hand, okay? If you want, you can put some anti-seize compound on these bolts. You don't need to. Make sure you do not over torque these bolts onto the turbo, or you will be in a world of hurt next time you need to remove it. They will fuse themselves in there pretty good with the heat cycling. Once you've got the turbo bolts finger tight, you can go ahead and line up these 2 sections, the flanges here. Make sure you put your gasket in between there. And put some fasteners in there just to hold it all in place before you tighten it up. You want to tighten this stuff kind of evenly. So we're going to finger tighten this until it snugs up, but we're not going to torque it. Now that you've put your bolt through, you want to put a lock washer on the other side, and then your nut. And repeat that for the other 2. And then we'll just hand tighten them until those flanges sandwich that gasket nicely, but we won't torque it yet. We want to make sure everything's lined up nicely so we're not putting any undue stress on any one component. Just till they contact the gasket. That should be good. Now we'll snug up the bolts on the turbocharger. I recommend hand tightening that stuff. You don't want to mess up any threads on the turbo. That is an expensive piece. So I can't really get a great shot in there, so I'm just gonna go in there and snug them up. I don't think I need to show you guys how to do that, and then we'll take it to the next step. So I've tightened up all the hardware on the turbocharger between the turbo and the downpipe. I reinstalled and tightened all the fasteners holding the heat shields around the turbocharger. Make sure you get those positioned properly. The stock heat shields like to bend. Make sure you take the extra time to get them secured on there and kind of bent back into the shape they should be. You don't want anything melting or burning back there. Now that the bolts to the turbocharger are torqued, we can go ahead and we can torque up the 3 bolts here between the muffler section and the downpipe. Once we're done that, our last step is going to be installing the O2 sensor. Once again, don't go crazy. There's a gasket in there, there's lock washers. You don't need to go insane with these, but do get them nice and tight. You're gonna wanna check all these fasteners after a few rides on the turbo and on the downpipe to muffler connection here, because sometimes with heat cycling, things can potentially loosen up. And the vibration as well. So it's just good to double check that. Now we'll go ahead and do the O2 sensor. The O2 sensor used on the RZR application here is a motorcycle size sensor, not automotive size. The bung on this downpipe is automotive size. If you're running a big turbo, if you're running a very aggressive tune of some sorts, or if you have any other turbo or engine modifications, then it's highly likely that you may have upgraded to a different style O2 sensor, which will be an automotive style or an automotive size sensor. So you require an adapter. This is an adapter bung. It threads into here and allows you to convert that to a smaller size. Disregard the fact that my bung is dirty and used. This is a very early production system. This is the first production system that GGB's released. The bungs were not available in stock yet when they shipped me my system. If you order a system from the point this video comes out, or even if you ordered one probably a couple weeks ago before I installed this, it will come with a brand new adapter bung, so you don't have to worry about sourcing that. So just snug that up now. Your bung might look a little bit different, but that doesn't matter. This one's a 19 mil. Don't go crazy with it, but do make sure you get it tight because you don't want it to leak. I'm twisting it the opposite direction so that it untwists the wires as I screw it in. Get your line wrench on there and snug it up. Don't go crazy. There we go. That's it, guys. That's done. Piece of cake as far as installs are concerned. Very easy. What I like to do now is go around and give this exhaust system a really nice wipe down everywhere you can see it and everywhere you can get to, because you don't want to burn all this grease and all these fingerprints and nastiness into that stainless steel on your first heat cycle. You want to heat cycle this thing a few times really nice, and then I'll give you that cool gold, blue, purple color without leaving marks from your fingerprints. There we have it, guys. A full turbo back exhaust system from GGB Off-Road. Real easy to install, real nice clean looking system. So the most important part now is we'll wipe her down and then we'll take her outside and see what she sounds like and take it for a rip. Okay, so the GGB exhaust is installed and now we're on to the funnest part. Let's test this thing and see how it sounds. Another cool part of running your exhaust the first time, like a stainless system like this, is you get to watch it change colors. So we're gonna mount a camera in the wheel well here, and hopefully we can get a few cool shots of it heat cycling, and you guys can see the color pull into it, and you'll probably also see that thing glowing orange by the turbo. So stay tuned, we'll get some cool shots, we'll get some cool audio clips so that you know what to expect if this is the exhaust system you choose to order for your machine. Sounds wicked in my opinion. It's not much louder than stock, but it's definitely got a deeper, more tuned sound to it. I'm super happy with it. So I'm gonna go do a nice long straightaway here, so hopefully you guys can get a good idea of what it sounds at wide open throttle for an extended period of time. And I hope you're enjoying the other shots and the temperature going through it and the color changes and all that. It's a lot of fun. I mean, an exhaust is one of those modifications that really gives you one of the biggest impacts you can do, because it changes the way your machine sounds, and that has a big impact on how you feel and how others feel when they're around that machine and it's running. Too loud can be annoying. Not loud enough might feel like something's missing. It's all about finding that sweet spot, and I think we got it here. that's that, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I think the exhaust sounds wicked. I hope you do too. If you're interested in getting a GGB exhaust for your machine, check out their website. I'll put a link in the bottom of the video right here. And yeah, they make systems for pretty much every machine out there, or all the popular ones, and they're adding new applications pretty much every month. So if you're looking for a snowmobile or a UTV exhaust system, then head on over to their site and check out their offering. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you check out the future uploads from the CF Moto build content. We will be installing a GGB full exhaust on the CF Moto as well, and we also have a GGB exhaust we'll be installing on another one of our side-by-sides that you guys have not seen yet, so stay tuned for that. It's a little bit of a surprise. If you really want to see this exhaust in action, then make sure you check out our riding video content. As always, ride safe out there, and we'll see you in the next video.